Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott and I'm the Emperor of Stomaria. Today we're hosting another live Q&A, and as always I'm having to adjust the camera, so apologies for just one moment while I lower it. It is honestly one of my biggest pet peeves with YouTube lives, in that no matter what I do in terms of adjusting the camera, it just changes when I go live. It's very frustrating. But there we go, I think that's a little bit better. So, fair warning, I have just today, as in the last hour or so, actually changed the provider, our internet service provider. So we're going to see how the internet fares with me doing lives. I'm not an expert in that kind of department in terms of, upload speed, download speed. I don't know how the live is going to take it, basically. So just fair warning, we may drop out, I don't know, but if we do, I will try to reconnect. So before we get to the Q&A part of this video, as always, I just want to quickly run down a few things that I wanted to touch upon, but don't necessarily deserve its own video, or also things that I have already discussed in previous videos, but just want to update people on. So the first thing that I want to announce is that for those who have been keeping track of Stomaria's YouTube subscriber count, we now have reached the 3,000 subscriber threshold. So that's a major milestone for Stomaria, because we have built this from scratch. We have undoubtedly become one of the best known nation building projects in the world, and we have done it without any support or interest from traditional legacy media or anything like that. We don't come from a position, and I don't come from a position of fame and fortune, where I'm traveling internationally, meeting all these different journalists or whatever else, or throwing tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds into advertising or whatever else. This is all done from scratch on very, very small budgets, and I'm very proud to be able to say now that we do have 3,000 subscribers, and just before our 6-year anniversary as well, because a few weeks ago I did make a point of saying that as a milestone that we would like to reach before our 6-year anniversary would be to have that 3,000 subscriber threshold, and we have crossed that now. So thank you to everyone that has subscribed to our channel. Thank you to everyone that helped to share our channel about and engage in our content and make the channel as popular as it is, and make Stomaria as popular as it is, because ultimately without you, the message that we try to raise, the things that we talk about, just wouldn't reach as much of an audience. And I think it's something I do appreciate. I'm very appreciative of all of the support that we've had over the years, particularly from our longer term supporters, our subscribers, our citizens. And no, it's a good day for Stomaria. Now, on that similar note, we did have a video that was released a little while ago, probably a week or so ago now, called Friends of Stomaria, and that is where we have begun allowing nations and communities that don't necessarily qualify as full allies of Stomaria for one reason or other, because the founder, the leader of that nation or that community might be too young, the nation itself might be too young, the flag, the government structure, the ideology of that government or whatever else might have been changed a bit too frequently for our liking in the short term. It could be a lack of territory, or the actual aspirations of that nation don't really align with our own, or something like that. There'll be some reason as to why we don't go down the route of formally affiliating with one nation or one community or another. But we do nevertheless get many applications over the course of the years, anywhere between 50 and 100 as a ballpark figure. And so over the years we have racked up hundreds and hundreds of applications, but obviously extraordinarily few of them have ever amounted to anything. But with the Friends of Stomaria tier, this opportunity for nations and communities to become listed on our website as Friends of Stomaria, as a way of thanking them for their support for Stomaria, even if we can't do anything more formal than that at this time, That is something that a handful, probably a dozen or so, nations and communities have so far decided to take up the offer and actually either reach out to us, or we've reached out to them to communicate the fact that there's this new tier that we are more heavily promoting. I say it's a new tier, it's something that we introduced back in 2023. We just never really promoted it in as much as we are now. But we have a list of friendly nations now on our website, and along with that, I am going to make a full announcement video in the next few days, hopefully, once we get some information back from one of our new partners, because we have aligned ourselves with another nation, another community. So since 2022, that was the last time in 2022 when we permitted any nation or community to become affiliated with Stamia in any way. And that was the Republic of Vesta, which joined in, I'm going to say, November 2022. But since then, we've had no external allies, no new member states, nothing, because of the strict criteria that we have when it comes to who we formally affiliate with. With that said, I am pleased to announce that hopefully by the end of May or early June, hopefully just before the Imperial Summit, we will have a new external ally, which has been confirmed and verified and agreed upon and all that jazz. It's just a case of waiting for a video clip from our new partner, which I'd like to include in the announcement video. So keep an eye out for that one over the next few days. And leading on from that a little bit more, about, I don't know, 2 months ago, I think it was sort of mid-March, we introduced new criteria when it came to those that wanted to become or remain citizens of Stomaria. And what this basically entailed is we wanted to have an application form, because in prior years we've had various ways of trying to define who can and who can't become a citizen of Stomaria, which for the last few years has revolved around some kind of contribution in some form or another. So we had Patreon, where people paid a monthly fee, but we decided that wasn't really the way to go about it. So we had just a PayPal account, and people could contribute as much as they wanted. It could be a one-off payment of £1, or a regular contribution of £5, £10, whatever else. Whatever they felt like contributing to Stomaria, they could contribute as a way to adhere to our values regarding voluntary taxation. But even though that we do have those options available now, in the sense that obviously people can contribute financially to Stomaria, and we're extremely appreciative of that because it does help to fund a lot of the works that we do, it is a case now where we want to have an application process of some sort, so we have some control over who can and who can't become a citizen of Stomaria. And it also gives us a better idea of the kinds of people who want to become citizens and what they're hoping to gain out of Stomaria and what they actually understand about Stomaria. Because ultimately, I do want Stamarian citizenship to be a little bit more elite, in the sense that I don't want every Tom, Dick and Harry with £1 to their name to be able to identify as a Stamarian citizen if they don't actually know what Stomaria is about. And it's as much to our benefit as everyone else's, because ultimately, if they don't actually understand what Stomaria is, what it stands for, what the benefits or lack thereof of citizenship of Stomaria actually entail, there's no benefit to either party in allowing these individuals to become citizens of Stomaria. It doesn't help us in any way, because they obviously don't understand what they've joined or how they can get involved, or the actual aspirations and objectives of Stomaria itself. And it doesn't help them, because ultimately they may have joined something that they don't really fully understand, and ultimately wouldn't want to get behind if they actually fully understood what Stomaria was. I'm not saying this has happened very frequently or regularly, but as time goes on and Stomaria becomes better known and more well-renowned across the world, we do get applications and citizenship contributions, if you like, from people from all corners of the world. And so it's just important to me that everyone is on the same page. And, you know, when we started up Stomaria originally, I say we, when I and my wife started up Stomaria originally back in June 2019, it was a full year before we allowed anyone to become citizens of Stomaria. And even after that point, so that would have been June 2020, when we started to allow people to become citizens of Stomaria, we still had to have a one-to-one meeting, a face-to-face interview, to make sure that they were on board. Obviously, that was a very time-consuming process, a very laborious process. It didn't always yield the right results, but ultimately, it was a case of having some kind of barrier, if you like, some kind of threshold which people had to cross to make sure that everyone was on the same page, and so there was a bit more cohesion and a bit more understanding and mutual respect and mutual understanding, which we could all agree on. And so the reason I mention this is because even though that we have had this policy, this application process in place since March, and we insisted that all existing citizens of Stomaria would have to fill in this application form just like anyone else, mainly as a formality, because most of the people that have joined Stomaria I'll know on some level, and I know they've already contributed financially to Stomaria, so I know they're genuinely supportive of Stomaria. I just needed to get an idea of where these people were, what their interests were, what did they actually understand about Stomaria. And we have had some decent responses in the sense that the kinds of people that I thought would respond and fill in the application form and return it to us have done, not least the nobility of Stomaria. And there's a reason, obviously, that these individuals are nobles, is because they are the best of the best, the creme de la creme, the most dedicated and reliable of Stomaria's citizens. But what is perplexing to me is that despite my best efforts on multiple platforms and multiple different occasions where I've tried to get people to fill in this application form, we still have citizens, as of this moment in time, that have not filled in the application form but continue to contribute to Stomaria financially every month. And I don't know what I can do to kind of rectify the situation, because I can only contact them through the channels that I have available to me. It might be through videos like this or announcements like this, through the email that we have on record for them, courtesy of them either joining through Patreon in years past or PayPal more recently. But ultimately, there's only so much I can do to reach out to these individuals. And one of the things that we've included in this application form is the necessity to have your home address, your email address, and your number on the form. So if we need to, we can contact you about these sorts of things, because at the moment we just don't have that means. So that's something that I would encourage all citizens. If you have not yet filled in an application form, please do so before the 16th of June, as in next month, because that will be our 6-year anniversary date, and that is the cut-off date. Any current citizen of Stomaria that does not fill in an application form before that date will have their citizenship rescinded. It will be void, and they will be able to join again after that date, but they won't be able to retain the original join date. That's ultimately the only difference it makes. But yeah, and then on a more periodic, regular basis, we are going to look towards actually culling is probably the wrong word, but certainly making sure that we can verify that the citizens of Stomaria that have applied and joined and all the rest of it in a year's time, 5 years' time, whatever else, we reach out to them to make sure that they are still interested in Stomaria, and just have a general response saying, yes, I am, or no, I'm not, or if there's no response, then we can probably assume that they're no longer interested at all. I mean, what we're doing is quite primitive in terms of citizenship criteria and recruitment and all the rest of it. It's very basic, but ultimately it is just a way for us to try to keep on top of who is genuinely interested in what we're doing. Now, leading on from that, we have the 3,000 subs, which is great, new friends, potential ally, citizenship. Now, over the next couple of days, as say this weekend, I'm going to be working at Southwood to make sure that the land is ready for the final touches for the Imperial Summit, which is next weekend on the 6th, 7th and 8th of June. And the Imperial Summit is a time where the supporters and citizens of Stomaria and the member states of the wider empire, not least Wayward, who is obviously local to the area, can come together and build bridges. We'll have feasting and competitions and games, and there'll be plenty of silver being doshed about, I'm sure, and we'll have a good experience, or I'm looking to have a good experience. One of the things that I also want to do is to discuss, ultimately, Stomaria's future and the future of the Empire more generally, because the plan, as always, is to keep developing and above all keep expanding and acquiring the next territory of Stomaria and the next territory of the Empire more generally is something that we're going to be actively looking to do towards the latter half of this year. So basically after our 6-year anniversary in mid-June, we are going to be actively looking for land to acquire. Now this might be done through a purchase of my own making, if I can find suitable land and it's a suitable price, or it might be done through a joint purchase agreement of some kind with one of the member states of the Empire or individual citizens of the Empire if they're interested in pursuing that route, not least the upper echelons, if you like, the Stomarian nobility would be a prime example, because these are people obviously that I trust far more because they've dedicated a lot more to Stomaria in terms of their time and their financial resources. So they're committed Stamarian citizens, and I can trust them a lot more with these sorts of things. But that aside, expanding Stamaria's territorial holdings through that way and the Empire's territorial holdings through that way is something that I'm very keen to do. And Wayward in particular, I am keen to get Waywoodians together in some form or another to try to purchase the next Waywoodian plot, not necessarily a Stamarian one, but certainly one that I would be very happy for them to have that next territory, to have the next plot of land in which they can actually utilize in a far more impactful way, because obviously Southwood and Wayward South, which are two adjoining provinces of the Empire, those are the lands that we are currently working on. But there is a great deal of limitation in terms of what we can do. I mean, the land itself is in a national park, there's a tree protection order on the land itself, obviously the opportunities and possibilities are limited. If it is a strictly woodland plot with those kind of protections, it limits what we can do, limits what we can grow. It's not particularly local to me. It's a little bit over an hour drive, so it could be as much as a 2.5 hour round trip on some days for me to actually get there, do the work, and then come back. And when you've been there 100 times or more, and I've been there hundreds of times, that does kind of eat away at your time. Just the travelling aspect, so something more local to myself from my own perspective, but also something more local to other Waywoodians, because Waywoodian community is local in the sense that they had a quite a substantial boots on the ground community at one point at Wayward South and Southwood before we purchased it. Because for those that don't know, Wayward used to be just Wayward in the sense that it consisted of 2 plots of land, but when Stomaria purchased one of the plots that made up Wayward, it became Southwood and Wayward South. So for those that don't know, for context, that by this point a lot of people should already know that, but just for context for those that don't. But when I purchased the land from Wayward, especially in particular when I purchased it from King Daniel of Wayward, we developed it into what it is today, but ultimately we're getting to the point where it is more or less where we want it to be, and we are looking to actively move on, and I know Wayward is looking to actively move on and get lands elsewhere. So that is something that we're going to be discussing at the Imperial Summit, I'm sure, and something I'm looking forward to doing. And the event itself I am quite excited about, because I think it's going to be a good weekend. Last year when we had the Imperial Summit, it wasn't as good as it could have been. It was all right. We had however many people, it was like 8 or 9 people or something. We had some new faces along with some familiar ones. But it was a lot more subdued than the first time around when we first hosted it in 2023. But this year I'm hoping it to be a bit more lively. There's going to be, I think, a lot more children there as well, and that's a big important factor from my perspective, because ultimately what we are building is a generational project, and it is all about family for me. And so if we can get more families as opposed to just single individuals, not there's anything wrong with single individuals, but to have more families on site is good from my perspective, because I like to have the kids playing on the bouncy castle while the grown-ups are preparing food or whatever else, or doing archery or shooting competition or whatever else, or looking at the products at the stalls or anything like that. I like it to be kind of like a festive family affair. That's what I've always strived for the Imperial Summits to be, ultimately. It's a way of bringing communities together, like true communities. And I think we are heading in a direction, and it's very, very gratifying to know. But I think, by and large, that's all I wanted to cover. I suppose there's just one more minor thing. we obviously, just sort of leading on from the developments that we had with Southward and Wayward South over the last few months, we've also really revamped the Imperial market. So the Imperial market in times past used to be something that was either through a third party like eBay. We did have it on our website exclusively for a time, but now it's products that people can buy from our website, but also now the first ever stall at Southwood. And that's very exciting. Some of our supporters and citizens will have already seen a lot of the photos or video footage or whatever else of the stall that we have. And it's exciting to have the rhubarb that we've recently harvested put out there, and the honey, Sumerian honey that's been put out there. And it was about 2 weeks ago when I did so. So I will be coming back to the land tomorrow. So I'll be washing out a bouncy castle with Scott, who's another Waywoodian. He has a bouncy castle and it's going to be used for the Imperial Summit. We just need to clean it out, make sure it's all right. So we're going to clean that out. But when I go down to the woodland, to Southwood and Wayward South, I'm going to see if there has been any custom, if you like, if there's been any interest in the stall, or if it's all just been stolen, which is also a possibility. I don't know. But we'll find out. Hopefully it's all there, or if it's not all there, hopefully there's some money in the tin. But very excited to see what comes of that. And it is a good step in the right direction from our own perspective. Now, I have neglected the chat. I don't know if there's actually been anything there to warrant my concern. I think it's probably just some hellos. So we have the Arcane Herald, greetings Emperor, hello there. Empire of Abynia, hello. Slowland, hello. We have 4.2 acres of land. That's a lot of land, well done. Is that in like the States maybe, or is it in the UK, or some further afield? Random Doge Boy says, greetings from the ROA. Not sure what the ROA is, I'm afraid. Islandia is here, fantastic. A lot of Nibia, is that how you say it? They say good day, and who do we have here? Verastasia? This is the thing, every time I do a live, all of these people come up, and some who may have joined in times past, but I can never remember how to pronounce lots of these names, so you'll have to forgive me on that front. But I have noticed a lot of names that are actually on our website now, because a lot of these entities in the chat are actually verified friends of Stomaria, in the sense that, for those who haven't seen the video, it's basically our way of saying these are nations, these are communities, these are individuals who have expressed their support for Stomaria. They've submitted some information to us in terms of who they are, why they support Stomaria, and all that jazz. And the end result really is nothing substantial. It's not like a formal alliance. It's just us as a token of appreciation for that support, because for whatever reason those nations or communities might not actually qualify as formal allies, like full allies of Stomaria. But it's just our way of thanking them. It's a token of appreciation just by having their name on the website, but we don't really have any major interaction beyond that, at least initially. I am expecting some of these entities, some of these friends of Stomaria, to actually go further in the fullness of time and actually potentially become integrated as member states of the Empire, or to become external allies in a more formal capacity, where there will be some kind of engagement, some kind of mutual benefit to both parties. And that's ultimately what we try to go for. We try to formally align ourselves with those in which we can offer them something and they can offer us something that is mutually beneficial and is going to have some kind of impact on what we are building. Because ultimately, Stomaria could have easily 500 allies, in quotation marks. But ultimately, it wouldn't necessarily mean anything, because a lot of these entities are quite short-lived. A lot of these entities don't have anything to offer. A lot of these entities are run by miners or whatever else, and that's all fine. You've all got to start somewhere. But ultimately, Stomaria is a nation-building project that's looking to go above and beyond what most alliances or formal affiliations consist of. in and amongst other parties, in the sense that you have like the mutual recognition treaties or whatever else. We don't see a huge amount of value, if any value really, in that kind of affiliation. So we typically go down the route of, is there a benefit to you? Is there a benefit to us? If so, let's work something out. If not, we can still be friendly with one another. And in the case of the Friends of the Empire or Friends of Stomaria, it's certainly our way of just saying thank you. Super. So I've already forgotten how to pronounce your name. Verastasia? You're going to have to tell me. You have to tell me in the chat if that is how you say it. Spell it slowly for me. Verastasia? This is my first stream, don't worry. Well, welcome to the stream. Welcome to the channel. Maybe tell us a bit about yourself, because it would be interesting to know what exactly you're up to. Asgardia says, your April Fool's very good. At the start of the video, I was like, what? Okay, so for those that don't know, this is obviously referring to the Stomaria declares war on Molossia or something like that. I can't remember the exact title of the video. But yeah, it was our way of trying to see how many people out there would take the bait, if you like, and actually comment on the video or share the video or whatever else without actually watching it, and consequently proving the point of the video, which was clear in the latter half of the video, in which it was kind of a social experiment to see who would share it without actually watching it. Because obviously Stomaria doesn't engage in wars or hostilities or embargoes or investigations or whatever else. That's more for Micronations rather than Stomarians. But we do like to make light of it from time to time, and a lot of people do eat it up. It was a very popular video. It got a very healthy response, and that is typically, I find, the kind of the sad thing about this experience, in the sense that there's plenty of content that we have on our channel which is about Stomaria's growth and development and expansion and the steps we're taking towards achieving certain goals. A lot of the videos on our channel are, for instance, like the progress reports of Southward about, we're clearing land or putting up fencing or planting rhubarb or establishing solar panels, or we've got new chickens, or all these different things. But the progress reports, by and large, are probably one of the least popular aspects of our content on YouTube. And conversely, some of the easiest videos to make, some of the most ultimately pointless videos to make, do revolve around videos in which we mockingly engage in some kind of drama. Like the Molossian video would be a very good example of that. But in times past, we've had, Stomaria is no more, or Stomaria is at war, or whatever else. Like we do these videos like once every 2 years or something, and they always get quite a healthy reaction. I suppose on the flip side of that, one of the probably the most popular videos that we've got on our channel is about how to establish a nation, and obviously how to establish a micronation before we sort of transitioned. Before we abandoned the terminology back in 2022, we had the How to Start a Micronation series up to that point, and then we decided to make a new series, which was a bit fresher, called the How to Start a Nation series, and that was in 2023. So between those two series, there are massive contributors, I think, to how successful Stomaria has been in terms of its social media growth, because ultimately it does attract a lot of interest from a lot of people. I mean, even if I post a video like this live, for instance, we'll have X amount of comments, X amount of views, X amount of likes, and over the next few days it will rack up a few. But in the chart that we look at on our YouTube analytics, the statistics, which shows you how many views each video is getting in a 48-hour period, or a week-long period, or a 28-day period, or whatever else, consistently, some of our oldest videos, going back to how to start a micronation, or how to start a nation, or whatever else, these will consistently get as many views as some of our newer content, which is fine, but it's very surprising to me. That's kind of the gateway drug, is the How to Start a Micronation, How to Start a Nation series that we have, is how a lot of people end up finding about Stomaria. And then from there, they kind of delve into a bit more of the history of who we are. And I do find it interesting, and I do question this sometimes, because a lot of people that come across the How to Start a Micronation series in particular, and then a lot of our earlier content up until, say, even as early as 2023, I suppose, that we have changed so much since then. And I do wonder how many times people sort of watch some of our earlier content and assume that's what we are like now. That is how we operate now. Because I still get all these emails and messages and saying, oh, we've seen you on YouTube or whatever else. And they always go on about how much of a great micronation we are or whatever else. And it doesn't irk me at all, because it's, micronation is a term that people use as a layman's term to encompass a great many entities. I've used it in times past to describe Stomaria, even in more recent videos for the sake of simplicity, like the 10 most popular micronations on YouTube, for instance. We had a lot of nation building projects, Stomaria included, that don't identify as micronations on that list, but for simplicity purposes just define them as micronations. But obviously Stomaria doesn't identify itself as a micronation because we don't want to associate by and large with large swathes of the micronational community, because large swathes of the micronational community, as we've discussed many times before, is a little bit pointless at the best of times, and can be quite extreme or dangerous, especially on some of the fringes from time to time. You do have stories of people setting up weird cults, and there's been predators that have been exposed in some form or another, and there's also this tendency for micronations to kind of pull together kind of the worst elements of childish banter and memes and all the rest of it, but predominantly occupied by children, young people. But it also draws in very strange, particularly men, I find, but strange adults for the most part. And I like to think of myself personally as someone that's relatively normal in that sense. Obviously, as you go around going proclaiming yourself as the emperor of this nation or that, there's only so much normalcy you can claim. But I'm just a kind of a typical family man for the most part, and I do this as a way to enhance the interests of my family and other families around me, and the members of my community. Because ultimately what we do does matter, because what we are doing is building something genuine and generational, and actually trying to establish something that's going to have a benefit to all of our lives. But with all that said, there are many people within the micronational community that are just strange. They're very, very weird, and I could tell you some true horror stories. I won't for the sake of this video, I don't want to get demonetized, but yeah, there's some weird people out there, so I suppose just be careful is what I would say if you are engaging in micronational groups or forums or subreddits. There are some weird people out there, so just be aware of that. I can't even remember why we got onto this. The April's Fool video, yes. See, this is the problem when I do these lives, and this is why, for those who may have noticed, a lot of our videos now, I say a lot of them, all of our more recent videos, or virtually all of them, are very heavily scripted, in the sense that it'll be a case of a few sentences and it'll cut out and then cut back in and cut back out and that's because I do tend to ramble a lot. I go off tangents, and this is why I like to do the lives from time to time, because it just let me speak a bit more freely and a bit more openly and honestly without a script to hand or whatever else. And I do enjoy hanging out with everyone and making sure that I can answer any questions or concerns that people might have about Stomaria. But it turns out that if I do, this being a prime example, I could speak for 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes about a off-the-cuff joke and end up in a situation where we're discussing things that had nothing to do with the original comment. So we'll see how we go for the next one. Verastasia says, you're saying it correctly, fantastic. Empire of Albania says, I have a question. Did you mint your coins by yourself, or did you order them from a website? We are currently attempting to get a real currency in circulation, as you have. Well, first of all, fantastic. You should absolutely pursue that if it's within your means to do so. What I would say right off the bat is that if you're looking to do something that requires if you're trying to establish a monetary system based on a commodity money, so copper, gold, silver, whatever else, a commodity that actually has a value, and the value of that money is derived from the commodity itself. So, you have silver, and it's not worth 20 times what the silver is actually worth, it's just worth what the silver is worth. That's a true commodity money. But the what I would say is, if you are going to go doing that route, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it where you are creating custom coins or custom bars. It is fantastic to do so, and I understand the desire to do so. But ultimately, at the end of the day, silver is silver, gold is gold, copper is copper. It doesn't matter what's stamped on it necessarily. And when we initially started this process, we started off with acquiring generic gold and silver bullion from well, it was from Atkinson's bullion, but it was predominantly from like the Royal Mint, and some different mints in Europe as well. So we didn't have like Sumerian status until I think it was, I'm going to say 2021 maybe. It might have been later than that. No, it was definitely 2021 is when that happened. But for the first couple of years, it was just sort of generic bullion that we accumulated, because the premiums on generic bullion, rather than sort of custom-made silver coins or silver bars or gold coins or gold bars or whatever else, are going to be substantially less, and you'll be able to acquire more of them. So for £1,000, you might be able to get X amount of custom-made bars or custom-made coins, but for that same £1,000, you'd be able to get probably twice as much just generic silver or generic gold or whatever the metal is that you're actually getting, if it is, I presume, the metal that you are getting. But nevertheless, if you are interested in learning more about where we get our coins and bars, we get our coins from, I'm trying to think now, it's Coins for Anything. It's on our website. If you go to the, on our website, on About Us, Imperial Treasury, it should say Coins for Anything. But I should stress, we stopped using them because the premiums were just too high. And that's why we transitioned to these Stata bars, which have basically subsumed and replaced the Stata coins. Because the premiums, even though they're still a lot higher than just generic bullion, are far, far smaller than the coins itself. So the coins has something like a premium of, I don't know, it depends how many you bought, but it could be like anywhere between 400 and 500%, which is obviously massive. Whereas the bars are closer to maybe, depending on the size of the bar you get. I mean, the 50-gram bars, I think, are probably about 40 or 50% premium from memory. They might be a little bit more than that. They might be, maybe they were initially when we started buying them, but maybe they're close to 60%. But even so, the premium is 10 times smaller than the coins, so we could get a lot more bars. And we order the bars from a bullion dealer in the UK called, I think they're called Gold Bullion Dealers from memory. It's been a minute since I ordered anything from them. But yeah, again, it'll be on the Imperial Treasury website tab. And we order plain bars, and then we have these custom-made hand stamps that we got from Etsy, and we get the plain bars, we get the stamps with Stomaria or Wayward or Vesta, and eventually other member states of the Empire featured on these hand stamps, and then we just use a anvil, pop them on, and that's how we create these Stata bars. They're not nearly as neat and refined and as professional looking as the coins, obviously. But as I said earlier in this little segment, silver is silver. It doesn't matter. It's not that important. It's not that precious. So if you're looking to get a usable monetary system, I would definitely recommend either just generic bullion, or if you do want to go down the custom route, I would try to find a as cheap an alternative from a reputable source, I should stress, as possible, rather than getting custom-made coins and everything, because they will be, I suspect, a lot more expensive to actually acquire and make the establishment of a monetary system that much harder. As Landia says, sometimes I go back and look at your website to see your nation's name, our nation's name on your nation's website. It's a huge honour to be a friend of Samaria. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. Don't worry, you'll be on there for a long time, yes, I'm sure. Something we will do is something similar to the Citizens of Stomaria with the application form. There's not going to be like a formal application process, but maybe, you know, once a year or once every couple of years, we will go through the list of Friends of Stomaria, and we will remove those that don't respond to, you know, our queries as to whether or not they're still actually active or interested in Stomaria or whatever else. So one of the big problems that we've always had, and I think a prevalent issue within sort of micronationalism in particular, but also the nation building experience more generally, is that a lot of these entities have very short lifespans. So we don't want to have hundreds of defunct entities listed on our website. So we are going to be doing sort of periodic, not quite regular, but periodic checks to see if everyone on that list is still actually around. But I know Asgardia has been around for a minute, so long may it continue, and hopefully over time you'll be able to develop and expand, and we look forward to seeing your progress over the months and years to come. What do you think and know about Islandia? Is that directed to me, or are you talking to someone else? Because Islandia is obviously in the chat. Arcane Herald says, well, Andrew, how are you? I'm pretty good. I'm upbeat at the moment. My beautiful wife, Empress Samantha, and my darling daughter, Princess Eleanor, are currently visiting their, my wife's grandmother and my daughter's great-grandmother in Swanage, which isn't too far away from Southwood and Wayward South, actually. But they left earlier this morning while I was at work, and I'm using the opportunity this weekend to not only have a live stream where I can just talk uninterrupted or without concern for time limits or anything like that, but also it gives me an opportunity to do a lot of work at the Woodland over the weekend to get everything ready for the summit the following weekend. So it's all worked out pretty well, but it's only been about 24 hours since I last saw my little girl, and I already miss her terribly. So a father's love, I'm afraid. Where are we now? Republic of Woodland, greetings, Your Excellency. Hello. Yes, we actually added the Republic of Woodland to the website as well today. I do have a backlog of I think maybe 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen entities that have either approached us or we've approached them about whether or not they want to be added to the list of Friends of Stomaria. So there are more to be added. I just haven't had time at the moment to actually go through and actually add those just yet. But Woodland is definitely on there. Well, if it isn't, let me know, but I'm pretty sure if you go onto the website, it should be there. Arcane Herald says, I have a question, Emperor. Forming a ceremonial unit, is it worth it at the beginning or later as the nation progresses? I would always suggest that investing too heavily in a ceremonial unit, which I presume you're talking about some kind of like quasi-policing, security, military body or something to that effect, something akin to the Imperial Guard, I wouldn't worry too much about it, frankly. I think I made a video about this before in the How to Start a Nation series in particular, but even for Stomaria, right, as of this moment in time, it's just not necessary. So if you don't think you're as far along as Stomaria itself, then I suspect you don't need it. We have the prototype uniform of the Imperial Guard. We had that introduced relatively recently. It's in fact the thumbnail of this video is me wearing the garb, and that was from the Molossian video, the declaring war on Molossia, whatever else, the satirical April Fool's one. But that aside, I'll only wear it 3 or 4 times a year. I won't even be wearing it at the Imperial Summit, because I just want to be able to enjoy myself without constantly worrying about getting it dirty or dog jumping up on me or having to be careful because I can't go on the bouncy castle with Eleanor or whatever else, or I can't go through a woodland walk because I don't want to get the uniform scuffed or marked or whatever else, because they're not cheap to actually make. If you're just going to get like a cheap, thrift shop, like a uniform or something like that, or get something from Amazon, you can do that. And get some like hand embroidered patches or something if you want to go down that route, but I wouldn't worry too much about it because it's not essential to the nation building experience. It's an aspect of it in a lot of cases, and it's an aspect of it from our own perspective. But even now, 6 years on, we don't have an Imperial Guard as such. It's almost a theoretical body because we just can't justify having a permanent or a semi-permanent body for security or policing or whatever purposes, with the events being as small and as irregular as they are. And that's ultimately all we intend to use them for, is for ceremonial purposes and for stewards of public events and that sort of thing. So it's not something we've ever really invested too much time or energy into. But it is nice to, on the flip side, it is nice to be able to have the uniform. It is nice to have the sabers and the air rifles and stuff like that. It's a talking point, I suppose. But you should be focused mostly, I think, in my experience, on actually developing your nation in a true sense, in the sense that you should be building industries, you should be building an economy and a monetary system, and making sure your government structure is refined and your ideology is clear and concise and meshes well with all of your values and objectives. Having some kind of military body is just a tiny aspect of the nation building experience, and I wouldn't worry too much about it, personally. But you know, if yours is more sort of military focused, then obviously go nuts. Where are we now? Republic of Woodland says, what is a good way to gain more citizens? I think the very best way to gain more citizens is, first of all, I mean, it's probably heard it 1,000 times, it's pretty cliche, but start with friends and family is your best bet. But ultimately, you don't actually need to focus too much on the citizens, and more just worried about what you're actually doing with your nation. Because if you build the nation, the citizens will come. As I said earlier in this video, when Stomaria first started, for the first year of our existence, we didn't have any citizens whatsoever. It was just me and Samantha, and then little Princess Helena was born just before our 1-year anniversary, and so she was the first Stomarian-born citizen, and after that point, on our 1-year anniversary, we started permitting people to join Stomaria. But citizen, you know, if I had 10 citizens or 100 citizens or 1,000 citizens, what matters is having people that are actually actively interested and involved. If it's just a numbers game, it doesn't really mean anything. You know, I think, wait, who is it? Ladonia. They have, you know, they're always saying they have 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 citizens or whatever else. You know, they've got enough citizens to fill an entire stadium of people, many times over in some cases, I suspect. But is that a reality? Are there, you know, 50,000 flag-waving patriotic Ladonians ready to build a true nation in the modern world? I don't think there are. So if it's just a numbers game, you can just, I mean, I've seen people say that the subscribers on their YouTube channel are citizens, or the people in their town are all de facto citizens of their nation, or whatever else. There are plenty of ways you can justify saying you have 10, 100, 1,000 citizens or whatever else, but what really matters, ultimately, is having citizens that are dedicated to what you're actually building, who are, you know, not necessarily contributing financially, even just actually turning up to events, or helping you to, you know, design the flag or the coat of arms, or establish an infrastructure, or helping you to establish some sort of business or some sort of industry within your nation, or whatever else. It's all about trying to build something genuine, not just playing a numbers game with some spreadsheets and saying I have X amount of citizens because X, Y, and Z. You just want true boots on the ground, people supporting you, people actually showing up, people making sure that just making sure that the people that are involved within your nation, within your community, are actually doing something, that actually means something. If you've got 5 decent, high-quality citizens that are actually, you know, turning up to events, that are helping to establish the infrastructure, build your industries, contributing financially to support the nation, or whatever else, those 5 people are going to be infinitely more valuable than 1,000 people who signed up via, you know, a Google document, and you just sort of checked the box and said, yep, you're a citizen now, and you never heard from them again. There's more value in people as individuals rather than just massive groups of people, which don't necessarily add value to what you're building. But I suppose ultimately, in trying to attract them after friends and family, the best way to do it is just to advertise what you are doing. As I said earlier, Stomaria, when it started, didn't have any citizens, but people could see what we were doing. People could understand where we were coming from, where we were going, what our aspirations were, and ultimately, these days, they can see very clearly what the path we are on, because we have, you know, acquired the land where we have the solar panels, we have the rhubarb, we have the you know, the water butts collecting the rainwater, we have the soil rejuvenation, we have the events going on, we have the member states of the empire, we have a lot going on for us. A lot of people can see what Stomaria is, and this has all been developed over the years. I mean, a lot of people don't appreciate just how Stomaria didn't exist, you know, when it was first founded, in the sense that it was just literally one of these flags in the corner of my living room and a Facebook page with 12 followers. That was Stomaria when it was started. It didn't explode onto the scene or anything like that. It was very, very small and very, very insignificant. We didn't have a YouTube channel. That wasn't until later on. That was until May 2020, and then even until May 2021, it didn't really do anything with that. So in terms of what Samaria was, it was a flag in the corner of my living room and a dozen followers on our Facebook page. But because people could see what we were building and we advertised what we were doing and what our aspirations were, people just naturally started drifting to us much in the same way as they do now. So bottom line, make sure the systems that you do attract are going to actually add value to what you're actually building. But ultimately, the way to attract them, if it's not just friends and family, if it's random people on the internet or passerby, whatever else, the best way to do it isn't just to tell them what you're going to be doing, but it's to show them what you are doing. And that's the best advice I could give on that one. Andrew Colcott says, "Hello, Emperor Andrew. How are you today, Emperor Andrew? I'm very good, thank you." Winklepicker, good evening, Andrew. Good evening, Winklepicker. For those that don't know, I actually do know who this person is. And I hope you're keeping well, and I hope the van gets sorted before too long. I think Scott will be potentially down to address that very shortly. I haven't. We're going to be sorting out the bouncy castle tomorrow. If you're still listening, but after that point, I'm hoping that we will have some free time, and if it's not already sorted by then I'm sure Scott will come and sort out the van, so you'll be able to attend the Imperial Summit. But keep me updated either way. Republic of Witherland says, "I'm glad we had the private talk earlier, and I'm glad to say how pleased I am that I built trust with another Micronation." Yes. Yeah, it's yeah, okay, that's fine. But yeah, that's absolutely fine. We obviously want to encourage certain individuals and certain entities and certain communities to be able to thrive and develop in the way they see fit. And that's one of the big reasons that we've started to highlight the Friends of Stomaria tier, is because even though a lot of entities don't actually qualify as member states or as allies of Stomaria, we don't want to dissuade people from building nations or building communities and actually aspiring to build something meaningful. So that's why we have it as a sort of a token olive branch, if you like, so that people do know that we still have their corner, even if we can't formally affiliate with them in a real major way. Aslandia says, "Well, I've got to go now. Long live the nation and the Emperor." Thank you very much, Aslandia. We will see you before too long. Woodland says, "It is on there." Yep, I should certainly hope so. Arcane Herald says, "I plan to do a military. I plan to do like a military service in the future or a police academy, because I have plans to move to Austria because I have a lot of family members. I presume in Austria you mean, or I'll go to France." So, are you UK based now? Are you somewhere else, somewhere European based, I presume, or maybe not? Maybe you're from the US. I don't actually know. I don't even know why. It's just you would be British or European. Just proximity to Austria and France, I guess. But yeah. Well, you could have like a military service, I suppose. But I suppose the risk you have, that sort of thing, is you don't want to get a reputation necessarily, unless it's really particularly want to go down as someone that is overly militaristic. Because in previous videos that I had, going back to probably tail end of 2022 up until, I don't even know when I stopped wearing it, to be honest, but it's probably 2023 maybe. I used to wear the uniform of the Imperial Guard, which at the time was like a grey uniform. And the reason I stopped wearing it was because I was worried that the perception from a lot of people that would have only just come across Stomaria would see that and just assume we are quite militaristic, which is obviously just not the case. We have, as I say, the Imperial Guard is a kind of almost a theoretical body at this point, but we're not like a militaristic nation-building project in the sense that it's not something that's very heavily featured, across our content. It's something that is a feature of, but it's not the primary feature. So if you want to avoid getting a reputation, or you want to avoid getting a kind of a stigma attached to you because you're viewed as a militaristic entity, if you don't want that stigma, then military service is probably not the best way to go about it. Republic of Woodland says, "We will be having an anniversary parade in August, and I would like to have your permission to raise the Stamarian flag to honour those who are allies and friends." I mean, it's very good of you to ask permission, but ultimately you don't need my permission to raise the flag of Stomaria. in any capacity, be it as a friendly manner or a hostile one. But I would be more than happy for you to raise the Stamerian flag if that's something you wanted to do. No issues with that whatsoever. Guardian1326 says, greetings, hello there. I don't know, probably a bit late in the day, I don't know how long you've been viewing the video, so you might have to go back and watch some of our earlier content. But I do know Guardian1326 as well, so it's very good to see you on the channel as well. Arcane Herald says, I currently live in Serbia. Okay, so yeah, it was Europe then. I do seem to come across, on occasion, a lot of like micronations and nation building projects and everything from the Balkan area, sort of nudging into sort of Bulgaria and Romania even. It seems, I don't know why, it just seems to be quite a populous place. I think I know more nation building projects and micronations and all the rest of it that are from the Balkan region than I do from the UK, which is a bit perplexing. Yeah, no, that's that would have been my next guess had you not told me. Republic of Woodland says, thank you for letting me know. No, sorry. Thank you for letting me raise the flag. That's quite all right. As I say, you don't need my permission, but it's very good of you to ask. Arcane Herald says, I will mostly travel in future, so I can contact you if I want to visit Stomaria. Yeah, I mean, we do get visitation requests from time to time from various people for various different reasons. Yeah, I don't object to people visiting Stamerian lands at all. It just needs to be done in advance because ultimately it's not like a public park or anything like that, or a public town or a city or whatever else. It is obviously private property, and if people just end up wandering onto the land and we don't know who they are, then appropriate responses might be enacted, because ultimately it'd be like someone wandering into your garden. Yeah, if people out there do want to visit Stamia, I'm perfectly happy for them to do so. And it's one of the reasons that we do host events like the Imperial Summit, is to get people to get together. It's a good opportunity to meet one another, to meet some new faces, as well as some old ones, and really build those bridges. So yeah, when you're ready to visit, then we're perfectly happy to have that conversation. Arcane Herald says, the thing is, I don't like the Serbian government's current protests that the country are pure hell and pays very low. Yeah, I mean, I tend to keep my finger on the pulse when it comes to international goings-ons, if you like, and I am aware that there are some issues in Serbia at the moment. Certainly not the worst place in the world to be by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know there is some concerns in Serbia. So my thoughts are with you, and just make sure you keep safe and don't do anything that would attract the ire of those in power. Nick Copeland says, hello, I've been watching you a lot lately. I found you when searching for videos on MicroCon. Glad to catch the live stream today. I love your national anthem that plays at the beginning of your videos. Can you tell me a little about the history of that? Did you compose it? Well, it's interesting that you actually found Stomaria through researching MicroCon. And just before I get to the anthem, is it that you researched MicroCon and you came across our video in which we said we weren't going to go to MicroCon? Because I'm curious about that, because I remember probably back in 2023, I actually made a video about the MicroCon video that we made back in 2022, because the video that we made about MicroCon 2023 back in 2022, the views on that, the interactions with that, I think at the time were a lot more popular than anything to do with MicroCon on the social media sphere. So there weren't any videos or anything like that about MicroCon or anything like that, or MicroCon 2023 specifically. And the most popular video about it was our video in which I was explaining the reasons why we weren't going to attend, which obviously rubbed people up the wrong way a little bit, ruffled a few feathers, as you do. So I'd be curious about that one. Nick Copeland says, that's right. I did catch the I'm not going because if I recall right, you find it a little childish. Maybe the nations do not all share the same goals. You're more serious. Yeah, it's not even necessarily just about being more serious, because a lot of people that will follow what we do on this channel, and they'll know that we can have some satirical videos. We're not too stuck up in any real way. We're just very selective with who we choose to work with and affiliate with. And if we're over here saying we are looking to establish a nation and a community, and we are looking to accomplish X, Y, and Z, we're looking to acquire the land and develop the industries and become more self-sufficient, to attain levels of greater levels of self-determination, self-sufficiency, and all the rest of it. If we're doing that, and then we attend events where some of the lead actors, if you like, are giving speeches about Crocs and toilet paper, or how the evils, what the evils of squirrels are in the world, or whatever else, very random things that don't have anything to do with what we're trying to build. There's no benefit to us in trying to associate or build ties with that. And I think a lot of entities that do end up going to MicroCon, a lot of them, you do get a lot of repeat attendance, if you like, but I have seen far more than a few times a lot of entities that have come out and said, I went to MicroCon, but I wouldn't go back, because ultimately there's no real no benefit in doing so. And that's the unofficial mantra of Stomaria, in that, what benefit is there to us? If there is something that we want to do, if there's an opportunity in front of us, is there going to be a benefit to the Stomaria and to the Stomarian community? If it's not, then we won't go. We certainly won't go if it's going to be detrimental to our image and to our brand. And setting the Stomaria itself apart from the, for lack of a better term, the MicroCon crowd, the upper echelons of the Micronational community, who I tend to irk with my very existence. Trying to separate Stomaria from that is one of the reasons that we are as popular as we are. I think, anyway. So yeah, no, that's I'm going to go off a tangent if I discuss it too much. And I did want to double check. What was the question? Anthem. So the anthem, the original anthem that we had, because it's gone through, it's just gone through one rendition, I think. So there was, we had the original anthem, and that was, I didn't compose it. It was actually inspired by, I'm trying to think of the movie's name now. It was inspired by like an introductory musical number from Quest of Camelot, I think it was called. Because I remember when I was younger, I watched the movie and I thought that would make a really great anthem. And this was going back, 15 years before Sumeria was founded. And so we ended up using that, or in part using that, but we had someone sing it through, so we tend to use a platform called Fiverr for any of our work or music or anything like that. And we had an artist sing it. We had an artist, I say sing it, we had, they were from Argentina. It was like a group from Argentina who actually sang the lyrics. And then we had, which were changed a little bit from the original version to make sure that it wasn't exactly the same. And then we had someone else do the musical number, and we had someone else do the waving flag sort of effect, and then we just kind of blended them all together. The more recent one, we changed things up a little bit more, so it's still based on that kind of that initial musical number from the movie, but we changed it up even more to make it even more distinct, and we changed the music so it's a lot more, I suppose, dramatic. And I much prefer the newer version to the older one. But yeah, so I mean, a lot of like nations and communities and micronations, whatever else, they tend to like either reuse existing music in its entirety for whatever reason, or they just have an instrumental as opposed to anyone singing it or having any lyrics to it or whatever else. And we want to have both. And I think the anthem that we have is quite reflective of who we are and what we stand for. But if you are interested in creating your own anthem, I would, much as we did, I would suggest that you look at any kind of music or songs or whatever else that you can take some inspiration from, and maybe you can amend and change, or take snippets from it and base it on this, that, and the other. Just make sure it's different enough, so it's not like a copyright claim territory sort of thing. But yeah, no, our anthem comes from there. Where are we? Republic of Woodland says, Nick, do you aspire to create your own micronation? Arcane Herald says, Andrew, have you seen like the land videos I sent of my nation, and what do you think? Was that in the Discord chat, maybe? Let me know if that's the one, because I do recall vaguely seeing something like that, but I don't know if it was you that posted it. Arcane Herald says, it's located near the river, very beautiful area. I plan to expand, do some projects on the land in future, because Orister is young nation. Yeah, no, that's good. I think it probably is the videos that I did see, and it looks very very serene, and I look forward to seeing how that goes. Nick Copeland says, I like to dream of it. It's Republic of Woodland, but it seems like a tremendous amount of work. Yeah, it is, if you want to do it, quote unquote properly. I mean, depending on who you talk to, you can do it in a matter of 6 minutes. You just need to create a flag on some kind of free software, come up with a name, and post it on social media, and you're as valid and as important and as critical a member of the community as anyone else, according to some. But in my experience, if you want to do it right, if you want to do something that's meaningful, that's going to stand the test of time, that's actually going to have an impact, a positive impact on your life, on your family's life, on the people around you, you've got to invest the time, you've got to invest the resources, you've got to actually understand how the world works, how you want your own little corner of the world to work, to think about it logically, to go through the process of actually planning things out and actually enacting those plans. The way that the empire is structured, because I would always argue that before you start your own nation or your own community, it's always worth surveying the landscape to see who else is out there, because you might be the case of you'll find more value in helping to build another nation or an existing nation, or becoming a part of another nation or another community. Because that is a prevalent issue with nation building projects and micronations generally, in that it's a lot of one-man bands. There's a lot of chiefs, not a lot of Indians. And that's something that Stamaria itself struggles with. I mean, we have a massive following on social media, but the terms of citizens, it's still in the double digits. So, it's not to say that we're the only nation out there and you should join us and no one else, or it's not to say that you shouldn't start your own, because I think you absolutely should. But Stamaria is structured in a way that kind of facilitates that in some way. So we're obviously a federal empire. So you have Stamaria itself, and we have our own citizens, our own monetary system, our own government structure, all that jazz. But we also have member states of the empire itself, which allows nations and communities to become integrated in the empire with the opportunity to develop their own nations at the same time. And that works quite well because it ticks two boxes in the sense that it expands the citizenship and the numbers of Sumeria and the empire as a whole, which is obviously an important goal if the citizens are actually adding value to what we're building. But it also allows individuals to retain their own autonomy, especially on a domestic level, and their own identity. Because a lot of people, they want to have their own nation. They want to have their own identity, their own culture. They want to actually go through the process of building something themselves, and I can appreciate that desire and that drive. But if everyone is doing that and there's no link or bond between any of them, they do ultimately, I think, just frizzle out. And I think those that can be bonded together in some meaningful way, and I'm not talking like a quote unquote micronational organization or something like that. I'm talking about something far more meaningful, something far more impactful, something with a driving purpose in mind, and that's what the Empire of Stomaria is. It's an empire of trade, of commerce, and enterprise, about having a very selective application process in which only those that we truly think are going to be assets to the empire are permitted to join. But yeah, no, it is a lot of work, no doubt about that. Republic of Woodland says, all you need is an idea. I am developer from Micronation. Empire of Abynia says, another question, do you think a micronation should establish a form of first responders if their territory and populations are large enough? I mean, yeah, I mean, you can do if it justifies it. I mean, I don't claim to Sumeria to be a particularly large, populous nation or community or whatever else, but we've never had to necessarily justify anything like that, and so I suspect a lot of the entities out there, you know, probably 90% plus, probably don't need to justify either. I think it's just a case of really considering where your priorities are going to be. Is it going to be a case of you're going to focus on raising the capital, buying the land, establishing those industries, you know, growing food, raising livestock, establishing a manufacturing base, you know, creating a forestry industry, a mining industry, an apicultural industry, or whatever else? Now, are these going to be your areas of focus, or are you more interested in the militaristic aspect or the you know, the first responders aspect or whatever else? You can go down either route, but ultimately I think long term you'll find more value in establishing a solid base on which you can grow in terms of from a financial perspective if nothing else. Because if you invest, if you have, you know, say you have £2,000 or £3,000 to spend on something, if you're going to spend it on military uniforms and military gear and first responders stuff and all that jazz, you can do that, that's fine, but then it's gone, that's it. But if you're investing it into, you know, say you have some land, say you're investing it into establishing some raised beds and growing some fruits and vegetables and planting some trees, some fruit trees, for instance, or you're getting solar panels or whatever else, the results will be different because you will have a source of food, you'll have a source of energy, potentially a source of revenue through that path, as opposed to just a, you know, a military wing or whatever else. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's something I've always said to people who have always asked these sorts of questions in terms of militaries or, you know, first responders or whatever else. It's just about trying to build something genuine first, and then you can worry about trying to protect what you have. I think it's probably the best way I can describe it. Nick Houghton says, what is your vision for establishing a legacy for Stamia? By that I mean your 200 to 1,000 year plan. Ooh, 200 to 1,000 year plan. That is quite a long time to think, but Stomaria itself doesn't have like an end goal in the sense that we will keep growing, we will keep expanding until the generations ahead of me decide that they've had enough. But ultimately, if you look throughout history, very few in the way of empires or civilizations or nations, many of which exist today, didn't exist, you know, 2, 3, 4, 500 years ago, whatever else. So the legacy of Stomaria, if you like, will be primarily about how far we can take this. Because ultimately, if I can buy X amount of land, and then my daughter, when she's old enough and I've passed on, buys X amount of land and just keeps building and building and building and trying to find ways to continue to establish those provinces and attract those citizens and establish that cultural identity and that sense of community on even grander scales, where it goes from tens and hundreds and thousands of people to the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands. I often, have this conversation with people, this theoretical discussion in which you can say, for example, in a hypothetical situation, in a few years' time, for whatever reason, something happens, and Stomaria now consists of 25 million people in the United Kingdom, and we have the total land territory, the land mass consists of 60% of England, 40% of Scotland, whatever else. Massive amounts of land, massive amounts of citizens, massive amounts of support to Stomaria. But we're still not a sovereign nation in any conventional sense. But at what point does that tip over? At what point does the non-sovereign entity become the de facto sovereign entity? And the only reason I ask this, because it's an interesting thought experiment, is because there is this idea that Stomaria and other nation building projects are not sovereign because they're not recognized or they don't have legitimacy or whatever else. But for me, it doesn't really matter from that perspective. Because if you can establish yourself as an entity, and it's just a numbers game, it just becomes a numbers game as to how many people recognize you, then ultimately anyone can become, or any entity can become sovereign by default. If you have an island off in the Pacific somewhere and there's a tribe on that island and there's 200 people on it, it's not recognized as a nation or a community, or it's not part of the United Nations or whatever else. But to them, it doesn't matter because they're still living as an independent entity in their own right. And that's ultimately what Stomaria is trying to do. It's trying to keep pushing the boundaries of what is possible to attain as much self-sufficiency and self-determination as possible through legal and legitimate means without getting any unnecessary pushback from the authorities that be. Because I don't want to go down the route of building something and then having it torn down by the local authorities, as has been the case for Wayward in times past. And one of the lessons learned there, I think. But ultimately, something else I was thinking of the other day is, because another thing I get asked about, not just the legacy of Stomaria, but what are my goals? Where would I like to see Stomaria? And it was something completely different. We had a conversation about something else entirely. But the topic came up of how large England is, England specifically, as opposed to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but England specifically. And I think it was something in the region of like 131,000 square kilometers of land, give or take. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And so I thought to myself, well, how much is 1.3 square kilometers in terms of an acreage? And it was like, I don't know, whatever it was, 300, 350 acres or something. And in my mind, well, that's like a farm, isn't it? I know people that have 280 acres of land, dairy farmers and everything. So I thought to myself, what if a goal of Stomaria, in my lifetime at least, could be to acquire 1% of all the land in England? Because that's something to talk about. That's a milestone right there. I mean, we're quite far away from it at the moment with our little plot as it is. But it's just an interesting thought experiment. How much land can you acquire? How much in the way of citizens and support can you actually attract? How far can you genuinely take this? And the legacy of Stomaria 200,000 years from now, I honestly couldn't say where it would go. Let's first start in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, if I still have it in me, and see where Princess Helena later to become Empress Helena, and see how far she can take it from that point. Legacy of Stomaria, we will see. Barry Draper says, is the Republic of Stomaria real? Well, the Empire of Stomaria, is that what you're referring to, or are you talking about another entity? Because I've come across a lot of Republic of Stomarias in times past, and they don't tend to last more than a week from my experience. Quacker's Kingdom says hello. Arcane Herald says Quacker's Kingdom greeting. Nick Copeland says, would you consider inhabiting new land, for example, if you've got the resources to hire a ship to dredge up a new man-made island? No, I've never considered that an option, really. People always say to me, people often say to me, why don't you, because there's plenty of islands around the United Kingdom, uninhabited islands that are for sale, you can buy them, up in the coast of Scotland or something, you can go buy an island there and just, do your own thing. I don't want to completely isolate myself from wider society. That is not the purpose of Stomaria. The purpose isn't to establish, build an island, go move onto the island and pull people away from friends and family and live without any connection to the outside world. That's kind of dystopian cult-like kind of path forward, which I don't really adhere to. I appreciate that a lot of people will view it that way, but and even now, Stomaria, I guess, often gets accused of being a cult or whatever else. But what I'm looking to do is simply exist within the framework that we find ourselves, and if that means, buying massive plots of land and having homes on that land and having people live and work on those lands, and even though they might be perfectly able and willing to travel around the rest of the United Kingdom, and they pay UK taxes and they travel on UK roads and they adhere to UK law, whatever else, they still identify as Stomarians, and they still are practicing what we preach. They live the life that we choose to live within the confines of the law. We don't need to pull ourselves away from society in its entirety. We can work alongside society, but we should be in a position in the later years, we will need to be in a position, I would like to be in a position, where Stomaria, if it came to it, we could provide for ourselves. We could provide our own food, we could provide our own water, we could provide our own energy, we can reduce reliance on the United Kingdom and other external entities and build something ourselves. But from a legal perspective, there's not going to be people at the gate, UK customs or whatever else, checking our bags as we take our kids to school or whatever else. I think this is why a lot of people kind of fall foul, in the sense that they think what Stomaria is trying to do is to become an independent entity through whichever means is available to us. And that is not the case. Ultimately, I identify as a Sumerian. I am the Emperor of Stomaria. But I am also English. I am also British. I am also European. That we wear many hats. I mean, someone in France might identify as French, not European, but ultimately they're still European. That kind of vibe. So the idea that we would try to sort of pull ourselves away entirely from the British mainland is just not, first of all, feasible or realistic in any way. But it's also not desirable from my perspective. I don't want to isolate myself, my family, and the people around me entirely from everyone else around us. I want us to be able to live and work with our neighbours. But ultimately, we do have a vision in which we are living and working together in so far as we can to advance the values and objectives that we hold dear, which do revolve around things like family. It does revolve around attaining greater levels of self-sufficiency and self-determination. It does revolve around environmentalism or sound money, and ultimately providing for yourselves. Because a big part of what Stomaria is about, because I might be the Emperor of Stomaria and I have total and complete authority over Stomaria, but Stomaria is ultimately my own land, my own territory. I am not the Emperor of Stomarians, in the sense that I can't tell, not that I would ever have an inclination to do so, I couldn't tell a Sumerian citizen, sign over your home, your lands, your assets. I want it all because I'm the Emperor of Stomaria and you're a Sumerian citizen, yada, yada, yada. The idea of Stomaria is to allow individual Stomarians, individual citizens of Stomaria, to provide for themselves. I want to see more Stomarians buying their own land. I want to see more Sumerian citizens acquiring deflationary assets like gold and silver and all the rest of it to reduce the risk, to mitigate the risk of the inflation issues, which we've talked about many times in the past, across the world over, about the fiat currencies and all that jazz. I'm not going to discuss all that at length here. But the idea is to protect and provide for yourself and your family, and then to have a community around you that will help to protect the freedoms that guarantee that security. And this is where the motto family, freedom, fatherland comes from, which was, in fairness, only introduced a few months ago. But it nevertheless kind of hits the nail on the head as to where our priorities are. My priority, and the priority of every Stomarian citizen, should be themselves and their families. That is the core fundamental unit that we should be focusing on. Freedom refers to our ability to have the natural rights to be able to pursue what we want to do. We want to be able to establish our own businesses, to keep more of our own money and not pay as much tax as we should. We want to be able to pursue the things that we want to pursue. And a big part of trying to be free is about attaining greater levels of self-sufficiency and self-reliance. So you don't have to rely on your neighbours or other communities or other nations to provide for yourself. I believe this on a national scale. For instance, I think that it would be a mistake, obviously, to rely on Russia as a good example, a good recent example, to supply us with all the necessary gas and oil in order to have our society function, which is why we're quite big on renewals and all the rest of it. There should be alternatives to that. But that aside, on a national level, in terms of just national security, it should be a necessity that we provide for ourselves in terms of food and fuel and energy and all the rest, and as much as we can. But ultimately, it's also, and more importantly, boiled down to the individual. I want individuals to have their own land, individuals to have their own property, individuals to have their own source of energy, the solar panels on the roof or whatever else, their own gardens with their own food growing, their own chickens, their own livestock. I want small incremental steps towards having individuals and individual family units and individual communities out there looking after themselves. That is fundamentally what this is all about. And Stomaria, as I say, is going to be a patchwork of that. Obviously, it starts at southward and we would south, and obviously we have Augusta in the United States under the Republic of Vesta. But I want to see more and more citizens come forward with their own lands and go, this is my land, I own this land. And if they want to become a part of the wider Stamerian community and have that land utilised in some form or another by other members of the community, much in the same way as we do at Southwood. I obviously own Southwood, but I use it for hosting events for the wider community. The Waywoodian community in particular use it excessively. We have people staying on the land intermittently over certain periods of time to work on the land or whatever else. Not necessarily just Southwood, but also Waywood South. And it's just a way for us to collaborate with the assets that we have, with the lands that we have. But it is fundamentally all about trying to look after ourselves on an individual and a family unit basis. And I don't remember what the original question is because as I said, I just go on tangents. But hopefully that answers whatever question you may have had. Oh yes, inhabiting new land, man-made islands. Yeah, Nick Hopeman says, Barry, the Empire of Stomaria is real to the systems, but I don't know how many of them there are. Not many. As I say, double digits. I think we had probably 50 registered Sumerian citizens as of a few months ago. I'm not actually sure what it is now, but as I mentioned earlier in this video, we are going to be culling quite a lot based on the application process that we recently introduced. So we'll see how many are at the end of the summit, 6-year anniversary in 16th of June. Empire of Tree says, how many raised beds do you recommend? What's the best thing to grow? I see Stomaria, that rhubarb may be a good place to start. It depends. It depends what kind of land you have. We focused on rhubarb, not because it was the only thing that we were interested in growing. If you looked at some of our earlier content, you might have seen massive variety of fruits and vegetables and herbs that we grew at the land, which were all geared towards being more, shade tolerant, because it is in a woodland plot, obviously. And it just happened that rhubarb was one of the most successful things that we grew there, and so we thought, well, if it's the choice of having mountains of rhubarb that's going to grow successfully, and then we're going to have all 24 other fruits and vegetables which are going to be less successful, let's just focus on something that's going to be entirely successful. But if you're out in the open, if you've got open grassland or whatever else, you don't need raised beds, and you don't need to just focus on rhubarb. You can have a lot more options. In fact, one of the things that we're looking at is to have like a grassland or some sort of open agricultural area, so we can start to grow things like wheats and oats and barleys and things like that, things we can't grow at the land at the moment. Because ultimately what we would like to do is we would like to have lands that are dedicated to growing things for like feed for animals. And so we'd have one particular territory over here which had various livestock, be it goats or pigs or chickens or whatever else. And then we have another plot over here which will be focused on growing wheats and barleys and rye and whatever else. And then obviously we have places like Southwood, which has its own advantages, so we can grow rhubarb there, but also there's a lot of trees, and when they, even though there's tree protection orders on them, when they do fall over or they rot at the base and collapse and nearly crush people, as they have been known to do from time to time, they can be dispatched, chopped up, and used as firewood. So there is an advantage there as well. So every province will have a particular asset or a benefit to it, which we can utilize, and we want to have a sort of mixed variety of lands which we can grow and utilize in very different grow produce and utilize in different ways. But in answer to your question, it really depends on what kind of land you have. So that would be my first question, I suppose. Principality of Calabasca says hello. Barry Draper says established a sick burn. Okay. Principality of Northarwick. I never know how to pronounce your name. Norarthwick. Tell me if I'm saying it right. Norarthwick. I meant to ask. It's actually on my to-do list. Did you ever send a package that we discussed for the flag and the summit and all the rest of it? If you did, let me know. So I would be interested to know if we're supposed to be keeping an eye out for that for the summit, because obviously the summit is next weekend, and it's obviously rapidly run out of time if you want to have anything featured there. So let me know. Barry Drip says 1% of England is the size of Greater Manchester. You're an emperor with big dreams. Yep, that's definitely something I've been accused of before. Arcane Herald says, Emperor, what is your opinion on nobility, and do you think like royal houses can be formed without being royal? My family served served the Soviet Union in the past. My grandfather was like one of the marshals. Well, I mean, I have my own views on communism in particular, and the Soviet Union, I suppose, would fall into that category. But in the sense of royalty and nobility and all the rest of it, I identify as the Emperor of Stomaria. I don't come from any sort of royal lineage. But then my argument is always, and has always been, what makes someone, what is a royal lineage? It's just a case of time. If in 500 years' time someone is claiming to be the Emperor or Empress of Stomaria because I was the Emperor of Stomaria 500 years ago, that's a hell of a lineage. That's a hell of a legitimacy to have. And one of my favorite examples, and you have to forgive me because I can't remember the exact timeline of this, but when Italy, which was the Kingdom of Italy in World War II, when the war was over after World War II, they had a referendum as to whether or not they wanted to have a monarch anymore. And very narrowly, they said that they wanted to get rid of the monarchy and become a republic. And it was interesting because the King of Italy, so you have the King of Italy, they have a referendum and say, we don't want a King of Italy anymore. And so just like that, he was no longer the king. And there was, what lineage is going to help him with that? You're still not the King of Italy today, it's still the Republic of Italy. And so my argument is always, it's not lineage that matters, it's simply the will of the people ultimately. Because if the people underneath you don't recognize you as the king or the queen or the lord or the lady or whatever else, then you can identify as that all you like. But from a practical perspective, it's probably not going to do you any favors. So yeah, it's another one. So this is the same kind of category as sovereignty. What makes a nation sovereign? Is it some other nation or community halfway around the world that says you are or aren't a nation? Or is it simply the people around you go, well, we'll just do our own thing. We'll consider ourselves sovereign. It doesn't matter what other people say or what other people do. If we're just doing our own thing, what does it matter? And this is the thing with me. I'm always a lot more practical. It's an interesting thought experiment when you think about all of these different aspects of the nation building experience and lineages and sovereignty and nobility, and it's an interesting thing to think about and talk about. But ultimately, I'm interested in what is practical and what is logical and what is actually going to be an actual benefit to myself, to my family, to the people around me. And so when I, like with the title Emperor of Stomaria, for instance, I don't go around proclaiming myself to be the Emperor of Stomaria and then insisting people bow and scrape at my feet or insist they call me your Imperial Majesty or whatever else. Almost nobody around me does, and that's not something I encourage because ultimately I'm just Andrew. And there are Micronationalists in particular. I think who was it? Someone from Westarctica. No, it will be another tangent if I go down this route. But anyway, there are a lot of people that are obsessed with titles, especially within the Micronational community, and insist on being called your Excellency or your Grace or your Majesty, and they take great offence if you don't do that. But I don't care. I'm not like that. If people just want to call me Andrew in an email or whatever else, or Andy or whatever else, I don't care. I just genuinely don't care. As long as the practical steps are being taken to actually build a nation, if things are moving in that direction, that's all I really care about. So things like title, lineage, nobility, it's not that important to me. And in Stomaria, incidentally, the title of nobility is simply a recognition that those particular citizens that have the title of Lord and Lady of Stomaria, whatever else, it's simply a way of identifying those that have committed themselves far more fully than others. They have proven themselves to be dedicated Stomarian citizens, which is a title that isn't even hereditary in that sense. So maybe you can go down that route as well. Republic of Woodland says, if you have nothing nice to say, please don't say anything. Barry says, what did I say? Okay, it's going to be a conversation about that. Oh, it's actually about me. Okay, never mind. I'm not offended. Don't worry about it, Woodland. That's quite all right. Or Arcane Herald. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about Barry's Barry Draper's comments about my big dreams. I do. I am a dreamer. There's no two ways about it. Principality of Calabaska said, would you support micronations claiming their homes of other people or public areas? It's quite common these days. It's not these days. It's something that's been going on for time immemorial, long since I joined the Micronational community back in 2019, long after I left it in 2022, and much before and much since. It's, you know, it'll be an ongoing thing forever. Claiming public parks or your own home or other people's homes or whatever else. Claiming territory means nothing. If you claim your house, fine, but are you going to utilize it in some way that's going to advance the interests of your nation? I own my own home, but I don't claim this as a part of Stamarian territory, because ultimately I'm not having people come here to do anything with this particular property, whereas at the south would, obviously, that is the case. So Stamarian territory isn't Stamarian territory. Where I am now in my own home is not Stamarian territory. Now other people can go down that route if they don't have land, maybe they want to utilize their garden or something. But then you can utilize it. If you're utilizing it, fine. I have so much more interest and so much more respect for people that are growing half a dozen potted plants on their balcony than I do with someone that's claiming a local park and just parading around it. I have a lot more interest in the former and a lot less interest in the latter. But that's just from my perspective. Because I say, on the one hand, you're taking pragmatic, positive steps towards actually establishing something. On the other hand, you're doing nothing. But again, that is just my very controversial opinion, which is not shared by everyone. Sorry, just trying to find where we are. Guardian 1326, going back to your anthem, in the original from Quest of Camelot at the end, they lifted shields while stating the virtue. It would be interesting if you created a video where you and leaders of the states sang the anthem, listing your virtues. I think that'd be quite a good idea, actually. And it's interesting that you actually know Quest of Camelot. Because it's, I feel like, I don't know if it was ever that popular back in the day, but certainly I have come across more and more people in recent years that have been familiar with that. So yeah, maybe that'd be a nice little feature. Maybe we'll do something like that. First we need to get the shield. Nick Copeland says, if I started a nation or empire or state, I feel that to get a more broad global acceptance of my country among the people of the world is to have a monopoly on all the rights to the territory. How do you mean, sorry? So do you mean you... Yeah, okay, so I presume you mean so you have like an ownership or authority over all of the territory within your nation or your empire, or whatever else. That is a way forward if you've got the resources to do it. But ultimately, even me as the Emperor of Stomaria, I'm not a multi-millionaire. I can't afford to buy, 300, 400, 500 acres of land in the UK by myself. All I can do is encourage citizens of Samaria to acquire their own territory and potentially engage in joint purchase agreements and probably acquire territory through that means as well. But ultimately, it's going to be kind of a team effort. Otherwise, it's just going to take too long. Is the bottom line. But nevertheless, you can still form a part of a collective whole. But with each within the collective whole, within that, there are provinces, there are member states, which are governed or run by people with their own interests at heart, as it should be. Because I wouldn't expect people to give me 10, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds, go, yep, you give me that, and I'm going to buy some land, and it's going to be mine, but don't worry, you can have some rhubarb every now and again, or whatever else, I want to encourage people to purchase their own land, because it's a big part of my own kind of personal philosophy about encouraging self-sufficiency and self-reliance on an individual basis, because ultimately I believe that is the way to maximize individual freedom. And over the years, this has become more and more of a prevalent issue from my own perspective, because I believe sort of collectivism is far more dangerous if it's forced. If you're voluntarily coming together with your own lands, with your own provinces, with the understanding that it is yours, but you're, you might be contributing to the greater whole on some level, you might be a part of a wider community on some level because you're protecting one another and looking out for one another and all that jazz, or you're trading or engaging or whatever else. But ultimately, there is this understanding that what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine. And I think that is a big part of, again, why I have a great level of disdain for collectivist ideologies like fascism and neo-Nazism and communism. You know, we've seen throughout history what happens when you try to force collectivization or you force people to give up what's theirs. Yeah, anyway, off on a tangent again a little bit, but I understand where you're coming from in terms of having a monopoly on all the rights of the territory. But I think having a total monopoly over it is just not feasible unless you're just going to buy it yourself. If you're looking to build a community and you're looking to integrate other lands that aren't necessarily your own into that, there's no other way around it. You just have to accept that you're not going to have total control and authority over all the lands within your kingdom. Much in the same way as, you know, Keir Starmer or you know, Donald Trump doesn't have authority over every square inch of the UK or the USA respectively. So you just got to play it sensible, I guess. The Empire of Trees. What's the best way to buy land? How did you get a good deal? Is that with the purchase of Southwood, I presume? I mean, the best way to buy land is to raise the necessary capital. I mean, I get this asked a lot, but you just have to raise capital and buy it. That's all it is. You cut out the takeaways, the new devices, the holidays, whatever else. Grind and grind and grind. Save, invest if you know what you're doing. And then over the years, build up a pot, buy some land. I mean, there's no secret to this as such, and I can understand people's frustration when they can't get immediate gratification and immediate results. But ultimately, it's just a grinding game, and sometimes you can do it quickly. Sometimes it takes a bit of time. Sometimes the land that you want is out of reach because of the price tag. Sometimes you have to start smaller. Certainly, that's what we did with Southwoods. It's not the biggest plot of land. And we actually purchased it directly from King Daniel of Wayward, as I mentioned earlier in this video, which was a big advantage from our perspective, not because it was cheaper, if anything, it was probably slightly more expensive. But the reason we bought it is, first of all, because Samaria could then have its own territory which we could develop, but also we had a semi-permanent workforce, if you like, in the vicinity, which we could utilize in order to help develop the actual land itself. At the same time, it made sure that the financial resources weren't going to a third party. It actually went to Wayward itself, which means it could develop itself in other ways, while continuing to utilize in some level the land that they just sold to us. So it was quite advantageous for everyone involved from our perspective. But I mean, looking back, I do question whether or not it'd be better to have purchased an entirely new plot, potentially something closer to home. But ultimately, the purchase of the land was a major milestone in relations between Stamaria and Wayward in particular, and kind of more heavily integrated Wayward into the Empire itself, which was another bonus, because it's nice to be able to, you know, pull our friends and partners close together in such ways. And that's the kind of major mutual cooperation that we're looking for. We're not talking about, you know, a shout out on a video or a comment or something, or, you know, because you've established an alliance or a mutual recognition treaty or whatever else. It's about major mutual cooperation, which is going to actually help to establish the nations that we want to establish. Principality of Carabasca says, really good point. I think we may try something similar here in Casablanca. Thanks. You're very welcome. Barry Draper says, what sort of music do you like? That's a question. It's probably not what you would imagine it to be. Let's just leave it at that. Guardian 1326. I'm old and I remember. Plus, you don't need shields. You have the swords. Lift them in the air with unity. We could definitely do something like that. I'll have to check how many sabers we have left. I think we probably got 3 left. So I'll have to have a check on that one. Nick Copeland says, thank you for your answer to my question. It helped me to understand the ideas of nations without sovereignty over a territory. You're very welcome. We do have a, if you're interested, because I kind of just talking, you know, off the cuff here, but we do have a video that was released relatively recently. It's called No Sovereignty Without Self-Sufficiency. It's probably only released a month or 2 ago. You might find that to be of some interest. So I would recommend you go and have a look at that. Iona Wood says, hello Andrew, what area of the country would you like to establish your other territories? Close to southward, probably easier, but further afield, maybe cheaper. No, you're absolutely right. That is the ongoing question that we have quite frequently within Stamerian and Waywoodian circles in particular, because we're both actively trying to look for land and try to acquire the resources to actually purchase the land, and it's just the question. I mean, there was talk about getting land in Ireland because it is cheaper there. Even northern Scotland, this is going back some years now, but in northern Scotland was being looked at by the Waywoodian community, and King Daniel of Waywood actually travelled up there with his family many a time to view some land with the intention of potentially moving up there, and we're bracing ourselves for the potential that Waywood itself would be relocated, like the hub of operations, to the furthest northern part of the British Isles, but that never materialised in the end. But yeah, where I am in particular, is relatively expensive when it comes to land, so you don't get a lot of bang for your buck here. Certainly if you go further afield, you can get more land for less money, but it's a big but, obviously. It means you got to travel, you got to have to relocate. And so what I want to do, ultimately, and this has been the plan since, in time immemorial, but what I want to do is I want to buy the land wherever I think there are going to be Stamerian citizens that will be able to utilize it. So if there is land close to me and it's proximity to me and it's affordable and I can get it, great, I'll get that. But if I have a couple of steadfast, long-term, loyal Stamerian nobles in a particular part of the world, or a particular part of the British Isles in particular, and they go, say it's in, I don't know, Wales or something, somewhere where it's relatively, nowhere is cheap in the British Isles. That's a fallacy. But there are parts of the world, parts of the British Isles, which are slightly cheaper. But let's say there are slightly cheaper parts of Wales, and then we have some steadfast Sumerian citizens there, and they go, we just found this 2-acre plot for X amount of money. What do you think? And I say, I'm going to buy that, and you guys are going to look after it. And that's ultimately what the Sumerian nobility was originally for. It was to be able to have governors of different Sumerian provinces, which either I would purchase myself, or Sumerian nobles would purchase and then integrate it into the wider empire as Sumerian provinces, but not under my own jurisdiction, because obviously it's not my land. But ultimately, I don't care who owns the land, ultimately, as long as they're committed to what we are doing. And if they're steadfast, loyal, dedicated to what we're actually building, it doesn't matter too much to me if I'm not the one that's pulling the trigger. I'm not so egotistical that I have to own every aspect, every speck of land in Stomaria. As nice as it would be, it's just not in the cards. And so I have to be realistic, I have to be pragmatic, I have to be practical, and I have to appreciate people's desire that if they are going to be working on a particular province, on particular land for any length of time, are they going to want to do that as effectively my serfs, or are they going to do that because it's their land? And ultimately, this is where I think a lot of diversion comes between myself and what Stammeria is doing and some other entities and communities out there. And it goes back to what I was discussing about the desire for people to have their own land. I would work happily 24/7 on a plot of land that was adjacent to me. Here, I would spend, if I could make that my full-time job, if I could just work on it non-stop and I could develop it and actually build a future on it, I would do that. I would not do that for just a random company. And that's the difference. Something that's yours, you're working to. I suppose probably a better example is if it was your own business. You invest a lot of time, a lot of energy, you do a lot of overtime, a lot of extra hours, and a lot of projects with a different kind of passion, a different level of passion than you would if it was just from some generic company. You're not going to Morrison's or Tesco's or Sainsbury's or something as an employee, and you're not giving it your all, you're not being 100% committed and devoted and dedicating your life to actually making that business work. But you would do that if it was your own business, if it was your own future and your own prospects on the line, if it was your opportunity for freedom, you would pursue that. And I think that's the same with the land. If I own land, people have come and worked on the land and helped me with a lot of things. I'm very appreciative of that. But I'm fully aware that from their perspective, they're just helping me get my own land ready. Whereas if other people purchase their own land and develop their own land, then ultimately they're going to be a lot more heavily invested into it. And it relieves the guilt from my own perspective that there are going to be people out there that are going to be working and developing their own lands for their own benefit, and if it benefits Sumeria at the same time, so much the better. But yeah, the long and short of it is, I don't know. It depends where the land comes up. And this is a big, again, another part of the equation. Just me saying, here's 30 grand, we got 30 grand, let's buy some land. It's not as easy as that, because you've actually got to find the land, and that's not something that's always in your control. In fact, it very rarely is in your control. You just have to hope for the best, really. You look online, or you talk to some people that you might know about lands in the area, or whatever else. But it's a very difficult job to be able to accumulate the resources for that, and then just hoping that you find the right plot. So we're not there yet, frankly. We're not at the point where we want to actively look for the next plot. We will be in the latter half this year. So after the Imperial Summit, we're going to look a lot more carefully. I'm starting to lose the will to speak now, as you can probably hear from my raspy voice. But we've spent the last 6 months or so just preparing the land that we do have, and then hopefully once we knock that on the head, we'll start looking for something else. And a big part of why we have an Imperial Summit is to discuss the next plan, the next steps forward. Who's got the money? Who wants to do this? Who wants to be in the next wave of territorial expansion? That's what we're about. Republic of Woodland says, I'm very sorry, but I do have to leave now. That's quite all right. Thank you very much for joining us. It was lovely to have you here, and we'll catch you in the next one, I'm sure. Nick Copeland says, what entitlements are given to citizens of Stamia by the government? Does the government provide any unique service or provide any particular service better than the nation state of the UK? Absolutely nothing. Zilch, zero, zip. And that is, again, a big part of what I'm talking about. We are not trying to establish some kind of welfare state. We're not trying to bribe you to become citizens of Stamia or whatever else. Stamia is an idea. It's a vision. It's an aspiration. But it involves the individual, their desire to actually go out and build something themselves, to acquire their own lands, to develop their own lands, and if they want to be a part of a community that's also sharing in that vision, to attend the gatherings, to build those bridges, to establish that trade network, or whatever else, that is what it's about. It's about trying to. Sorry, I just saw a message saying Arcade Herald said I just skipped a few questions. I'll get back to that in a second. But where was I? Yeah, in terms of like the benefits of citizenship, you'll get a little digital certificate saying you are a citizen of Stomaria, and you will be able to play a more active role in what we're building. You'll be able to attain a title. If you're dedicated enough, you can become a governor, maybe a part of the Imperial Guard if you ever get to the point where it's actually necessary, or whatever else. But ultimately, it's just about being part of a community of people that share the same values and aspirations as you do. It's not about what can I get out of this, because ultimately you're going to be disappointed if you think there's going to be something. And I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm just talking about people that might join thinking they're going to be able to, move onto our lands and milk it for all it's worth, whatever else. Because we do get that. I mean, we get a lot of people from like India and Pakistan, for instance. We get a lot of emails saying, "Can I move to your land because X, Y, and Z?" So that again, this is why I get concerned when again, not you in particular, but there are people out there that either support Samaria or join Samaria because they think it's something that it's not. And Samaria is a nation, it's a community that we are trying to build. But it doesn't come with an automatic right to residency. It doesn't come with a welfare system. It doesn't come with an educational system. It doesn't come with a health system. It comes with a collection of people with similar values and similar ideals that are all striving for the same thing, which is to attain greater levels of self-determination and self-reliance through legal and legitimate means. That is what it is all about. And if people are not able to carry their own weight in that sense, if they're just expecting things to happen for them, then they're going to be joining the wrong nation, because this is ultimately a nation of doers, of people that are actually going to go out there and, of course, be supported by the wider community if that's possible and practical to do so, but ultimately do it themselves. That's what it's all about. From start to finish, it's about freedom, individual rights, and individual responsibility, self-determination, self-reliance on an individual level. Nick Copeland says, Republic of Woodland, I want to talk to you more sometime. You encouraged me to make my own empire. I want to learn more about your republic. Okay, good, lovely. Sorry, I was just reading something else there. Iona Wood says, you talk about work, so do you work outside of Stomaria? What do you do? How do you find time to do both? That's a very, very good question. So yeah, I am not a full-time Emperor of Stomaria. If I was, you would see a lot more frequent updates from me personally. Um, my work has been varied over the years. I currently work as an estimator actually, but I've worked on various construction sites. I was a supervisor on a pipeline. I worked for AWE as a logistics operative for a while. In times past, I worked in the construction industry as a humble labourer when I first started getting into the workforce. In fact, my first ever job when I was, I think I was probably 18, was actually a trout farm. That lasted about a month. It lasted a month, and then I got fed up with that. So yeah, the smell of fish really put me off that one. So that was a line of work that I quickly scuppered. But yeah, no, at the moment I work as an estimator, which I do thoroughly enjoy. There are probably those who are wondering what an estimator is, and that's probably beyond the scope of this video. But yeah, the point is I do have a job outside of Stomaria. I am the main breadwinner. Yeah, I don't dedicate as much time to Stomaria as I think a lot of people think I do. I certainly dedicate a portion of my day, I would say, every day, and have done for a long time, to developing Stomaria in some way. It might be something major, it might be going to Southwood Developed Land or whatever else, or it might be just making a video, or it might be just putting a post out there, or writing an email to prospective allies or friends of Stomaria or whatever else. I'm always doing something, but it's not a full-time job for me. Because ultimately, I kind of divide my life into three parts. I've got my job, I've got Stomaria, and I've got my family. And it's trying to juggle those three major aspects of my life, which is always a bit of a challenge for me. And what I would like to do ultimately, as far-fetched as it is I would like to eventually sort of cut down or cease my working life, if you like, and become a full-time Emperor of Stomaria. So then I do have just the two aspects of my life, my family and the development of Stomaria, which would ultimately become my job. But we're not at a point, or I'm not at a point, where I can justifiably turn around and say I can maintain our current standard of living by quitting my job and becoming the Emperor of Stomaria full time. You know, the YouTube ad revenue is not going to cover my bills. And I wouldn't expect the citizens and supporters of Stomaria that do make financial contributions to Stomaria, which help to fund what we're doing, I wouldn't expect them to fund my lifestyle. So that's not what that's about either. So ultimately, I just do have to keep working until I have enough revenue behind me to live off my own earnings. That's a long time out, I should think. Right. Empire of Abynia says, do you have an imperial crown? No, I famously quite do not. We do have like a tiara for the Empress Samantha, which is in a glass cabinet over there. But I do not have any jewellery of any kind or crowns of any kind. Nick Copeland says, I have 9 acres of land and want to use my land to make money instead of just spending all my time and money just mowing it. Fair enough. It started, I started a garden this year. I would like to learn more on working the land. Well, exactly. I mean, before I bought Southwood myself, I mean, I didn't consider myself to have a very green thumb. I don't think I'd ever grown anything meaningful in my life, and now we have quite a decent harvest of rhubarb, for instance. And likewise, you know, building the shed and establishing the solar panels and learning how to install those and how it works in terms of generating the energy and all the rest of it. These are all things that I learned about on the go, and that's a really good and interesting aspect of the nation building experience. Because ultimately, it is about learning about how the world works and then trying to figure out what is the way that you would like to live, what is the path forward for you. So when it comes to renewable energy or environmentalism or ecology or monetary systems, government structures or whatever else, when you start to actually look into it and then you start to think more clearly as to how you want to go about building something yourself, what kind of life that you want to live, that is ultimately what this is about, not just Stomaria in particular, but for those that do aspire to build nations in their own right, or to become a part of it. It's just about trying to learn about the world and applying it to your own life so that you can live the life that you want to live. Randy, all right, yes. Arcane Herald, I will scroll back up. Let me just check. I can see some comments look like they've been retracted. I don't know if you did that, or if that's like an automatic feature. I can't see a way to unhide it. Could you put your comment? I don't know what comments. I don't know what comments you've actually made, which I haven't responded to. I can just see redacted comments from you. So if you want to copy and paste your comments or questions, then I'm happy to have a look at it. I don't like micronations based on hate. Okay. Was that the question? Right, okay. I will give it a few more minutes, but I am conscious of the fact that I've been here for, what are we now? Oh, we've just gone 2 hours. So we'll probably wrap it up before too long, because I do have some jobs to do later this evening in preparation for the works I'm going to be doing at Southwood tomorrow, starting with cleaning the bouncy castle, which will be a feature of the Imperial Summit, so that'll be fun. Right. So Arcane Herald says, I don't like micronations based on hate, you know, like a full authority micronations that is under the rule of one man or woman, like a dark age. Okay. But again, I don't, are you asking me a question as to what my view is on that? Or are you just making a statement of fact? Because I mean, I don't see these, just having a quick scroll, I don't see your comments regarding this earlier. So maybe it's been hidden or something. Actually, I've got top chat here. Maybe if I do live chat, maybe that will... Hang on. I just realised I had top chat on instead of live chat, and I don't know if that's affected. Don't see anything. No, okay. So Arcane Herald says, yes, what's your opinion on that? I mean, it depends, because I am the Emperor of Stomaria. I have total and complete control over Stomaria itself, the domestic affairs, the international foreign affairs, if you like. All of that is under my jurisdiction, under my control. As I made clear earlier, a few times now, it is my hope and aspiration that there are people out there that acquire their own lands and govern their own lives. But ultimately, it's if you want to have a collective whole, you do need some kind of authority figure. Now, I don't have any personal control over the lands that other people own. That runs contrary to my own values and aspirations and beliefs when it comes to how we're going to be doing this. But I do have control over who can be and who can't be a Stomarian part of our community. That is something that I can control. So yeah, I don't have like unfettered control over everyone's lives, and nor should I. But ultimately, I do have control over Stomaria itself. Barry Draper says, I feel like people in the chat did me dirty. Honest, I'm a good person. Sorry for any offence. I didn't see anything that I would have taken offence at, Barry. I wouldn't worry yourself too much about it. I have a quite thick skin at the best of times. Right, I'm going to have to start wrapping these up because they're still coming in, these questions. Empire of Abynia says, what's your opinion on absolute monarchies? I mean, as an absolute monarchist, I'm fully in support of them. But only insofar is that the absolute monarch, in my case, is nevertheless respecting the natural rights of the individual. In which case, it's not, I suppose, that absolute. And this is one of the fundamental differences between Stomaria and other nations, is that we are a nation based on voluntarism. So you can voluntarily become a part of Stomaria and you can voluntarily leave. But if you're a part of Stomaria, you do so with the understanding that within Stomaria, even though you have control over your own affairs, your own lands and all the rest of it, that's, you know, if they're yours, whatever. but you do form a part of a collective, and that collective is headed by myself and eventually Eleanor and then her descendants from there on in. But as I say, because it's based on voluntarism, I suspect it's less of an issue. Arcane Herald said, few problems occurred in Croatia with our land that was sold to us by a country, but that was under the control of some Italian family. I'm sorry to hear that. I can't say I know much about the history of Croatia from that perspective. But yeah, sorry to hear that you had some issues with land being sold to you, which was under the control of an Italian family. Guardian 1326, going back to agriculture, did we ever discuss the moringa tree? Moringa tree? I think it might be a good on your land as a crop. Just about every part of the tree is usable. I don't know much about it, but I will definitely look into it if you think it's going to be something that will be of some use to us. Not adverse to having a look at that. The one thing I would say actually is that because this is a TPO land, Southwood is in TPO land, which tree protection woodland, any trees that we actually plant there are protected, even if we plant them ourselves. So we wouldn't be able to use the tree if we chopped it down. So I say chopped it, we wouldn't be able to chop it down. So maybe not for Southwood, but maybe for a different province, one that doesn't have a tree protection order on it. Nick Copeland says, thank you so much for the time and attention today. I will let you wrap up and encourage you to keep making content because I do enjoy it. The United We Stand Down Forever always gets my attention. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate that. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Communist Republic of Albania says, hello Andrew, Stott, how is your day going? Very well, thank you. We're just wrapping up, I'm afraid. Arcane Herald says, Andrew, it was nice talking to you. Have a good night. United we stand, divided... United we stand, now and forever. You're quite right. Right, on that note, I think it'll be a good place to leave it. I have very much enjoyed the conversation. It's all been very respectful, all been very informative from my perspective, and hopefully for yours as well. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there. I'll do a progress report for Southwood in the coming days. But after that, it will probably be a video from the Imperial Summit. So I look forward to be able to sharing the footage from the Imperial Summit with you in due course. So that'll be in a week's time, give or take. Very, very exciting stuff. And then from there, it'll be Eleanor's birthday, then our 6-year anniversary. So plenty of videos to come out in the next few weeks. And look forward to being able to enjoy more time with you in another live stream a little bit further down the line.